Hello and welcome to our presentation on Foglight Synthetic Monitor for Internet. This first presentation is an introduction to the cartridge, and also we'll talk a little bit later on about the cartridge initialization, so I'll actually take you through a demo on that during this presentation. Before we begin, let's go and look at a couple of different parts of this presentation. So what you're looking at right now is part one of a series where I'll give you an introduction to the cartridge and the components of it, and also the initialization. Part two will be later on, and this is where we're actually recording scripts and provisioning the scripts out to the network. And then part three, we'll talk about the user interface. So the different types of reporting and alerting that you can get from the synthetic cartridge once it's initialized and provisioned properly. All right, so let's get started. So Foglight Synthetic Monitor for Internet, the details of this is it's a mixture of an on-premise application, and also it has a SaaS combination to it. So it has a web service component to it as well as the on-premise software. So a part of the Foglight management server and also the cartridge, that is the on-premise piece. So the Foglight management server has to be installed on a Windows, Unix, or Linux host. And after that, you can start installing cartridges into that. So the management server is basically a platform that can host a series of different cartridges, from end-user cartridges to app cartridges, database cartridges, network cartridges. And this is just another one of those cartridges that we'll be demonstrating today. Now another piece of this is the provisioning portal. So this is off-premise, and this is a web service. It does three things. Number one is you can save your scripts to it. Number two is it tracks your licenses. So as you play scripts and they're provisioned out and they play back periodically, it'll take credits away from the existing license you have. And the third thing that it does is it gets the data back to your Foglight management server so you can view it in reports and run rules against it. Another piece we have is the Quest-Click Recorder. So the Quest-Click Recorder, and this recording is done outside of Foglight. And what you can do with the Quest-Click Recorder is you can the Quest-Click user can come in, open the recorder, and then they can publish their scripts that they record to the synthetic provisioning portal. And this is the off-premise web service. Now there's a little bit of overlap in what you can do in the Foglight management server and the Quest-Click transaction recorder. In both of those, you can change what you do to how you provision the scripts out on the different beacon sites. Now about beacon sites, let's look a little bit more about what we have. So today there's over 70 different beacons out across the world, and this is just a quick peek at some of those that we have. So throughout the United States, Canada, South America, Europe, Asia, the Middle East, Australia, and Africa. If there's any questions on that, we can go into more detail, but there's also some variants at each of these locations on the different carriers that are available. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on our demonstration. So before you start, a prerequisite is you have to have a Foglight management server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into my Foglight management server right now, and I'm going to go ahead and install the cartridge. Now to install the cartridge, it's like any other Foglight cartridge. I would go to Administration, and then Cartridges, and I'd look at my cartridge inventory and see what I have now. Now what I want to do is I want to install a cartridge so that I can add to my inventory. I want to add the Synthetic Monitor for Internet. And then I'll install the cartridge, and this generally takes about 3 to 5 minutes to install, and it's installing right now. So we'll resume once we see that installation is complete. Now that there are cartridges installed, we can acknowledge the installation has completed successfully. And what we've done now is we've installed the Foglight Synthetic Monitor for Internet base cartridge, the SMIS agent, which is an agent on the Foglight management server that communicates with the provisioning portal, and we've also installed the user interface. What we can do to do the next set of initialization now that we've done the installation is I can reload, and what I'll see is Synthetic Monitor for Internet. I'll see a new folder on the tree, and I'll be able to open that folder. Now the first thing we want to do is go to Administration Home. When I click on the Administration Home, I'm just going to finish the first step for this part of the presentation, and that'll be to configure the synthetic monitoring. Now what we can do here is register our email address, and I'm just going to do a fictitious email address for the demonstration, and then put in our passwords. and then also our company name. Now, what's happening here is this is the agent manager that's on my Foglight management server. So this is the one that's installed by default with the Foglight management server. If you needed to, you could add a second agent on a different machine that would communicate with the provisioning portal. You might want to do that if your Foglight management server didn't have access to the internet. What I could also do is alternatively, I could go through a proxy, and I could connect my FMS through a proxy and also my agent that communicates with the outbound, or with the provisioning portal rather. I can configure that through a proxy as well so that it has internet access. So I'm not going to configure any proxy now because I do have internet access, and I'm going to go ahead and save this. And what it'll do is it'll create this John Doe user on the provisioning portal, which is again the web service that I showed you earlier in the presentation. And then when it creates that user, I'll be able to come in and now manage my account. So at this point, this is configured. I don't have to do anything more, and I can go into manage my customer account. Now when I'm managing my account, this is John Doe 2 that I just created, and right now this user doesn't have any credits allocated to them. I could also establish my admin contact, my billing contact, and I get all the information that I need for this user once I go ahead and get them allocated. Now what I'd be able to do to get started is upload a quest key, and I'd submit that. And generally what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and give you 10,000 credits to start out. So when you first install your user, you'll have a certain amount of percentages that you'll be able to go ahead and provision with. So that concludes this part of the presentation, which is the initial installation and configuration of the cartridge. The next presentation we'll do will be on creating some synthetic scripts. Thank you very much for attending.